Hi everybody, Crista here with another episode of The Barefoot Genealogist. Today we're going to start a series of episodes about Family Tree Maker. It'll be a three-part series. Today we'll be talking about tools. On Tuesday of next week we'll be talking about reports, and then next Thursday we'll be talking about places. So hopefully you'll stick around for those in the coming episodes. These presentations, or this series of presentations about Family Tree Maker, came directly from you. We had quite a few of you ask, and as I got to asking questions back and trying to figure out exactly what it was you wanted to learn, I discovered or rediscovered something that I just want to share with you really briefly. You've probably heard me share this before if you've watched previous episodes or seen me lecture. One of the things that I've discovered is that is a major difference between people that are my age and younger and people that are my age and older is this. People that are of an older generation, when it comes to computers, tend to be a little bit more hesitant. You're not willing to click on anything unless you know exactly what that thing does. Whereas people that are my age and younger tend to click on anything just to see what happens. And so a lot of times the websites and the computer software that we use are being designed by young people who think, oh, this is so intuitive. And yet when I sit down with you, one of the things that I discover is that for you, it's not always that intuitive. And it's just because of that hesitancy to click on things because you're not exactly sure what's going to happen. So my primary goal for the next 3 episodes is not to have you remember every little detail of what Crista said. She said to click here and then click here to get this. No, my primary goal is just to give you kind of an overview of what's possible and hopefully give you the confidence to go exploring on your own, to have the confidence to know that you can click on things and that you're not going to break anything or ruin your tree or cause any problems with your computer. So that's my primary goal. And then, of course, the secondary goal is to just help you become more familiar with Family Tree Maker 2012 and what some of the options are that are available to you. So with that introduction, let's dive in. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the tools in Family Tree Maker. Now, all of the tools, as we're referring to them today, are going to be found under the Tools menu in Family Tree Maker. Here are some of the things you should see when you click on the Tools button. You should see a date calculator, a relationship calculator, a SoundX calculator, global spell check, a utility to convert names, one to compact your file, and then you should also see some user information and options. Now there are some other things on that list, but these are the ones that we're going to try and cover in the time that we have allotted to us today. So let's switch over to Family Tree Maker. So here is my Family Tree Maker. Now this is the screen that I use most frequently. It's the Family tab. Here you'll notice I keep my index open over here on the left-hand side, the pedigree in the middle. The information about the individual I'm on is on the right-hand side, and then the information about the family is down below. I do most of my work in this particular screen, and as you spend a little time with me, you'll probably see that more and more often. Now right up here, on the menu, File, Edit, View, Person, Tools. That Tools button or Tools menu option is what we're going to be talking about today. And here you'll see all of those options that I just mentioned. So let's start with the date calculator. Now here is why you might want to use the date calculator. Okay, so for example, there are times where you find a tombstone, for example, right? So that tombstone says, that this person was 65 years, 4 months, and 3 days old when they were born. And so what you can do is you can use this date calculator to figure out exactly how old or when their birth date was, so that it'll help you figure out that information. Now it works a little bit backwards if you're doing it that way. You can also calculate, so for example, let's look here. We're going to calculate the birth date. So let's say that the date of death in this case was the 20th of December, 1916. And we're going to say that this person was 69 years, let's see if I do this correctly, 5 months 110 days old when they died, according to a tombstone or a death record or some other thing where the birth date was not included, but that information was. Now I can click on calculate, and you'll notice here a couple of things. First of all, it calculates a birth date for me. In this case, it's the 10th of July, 1847. And then there's kind of a little cool thing that I think that I enjoy that happens here. It also tells you what day of the week that was. That's just another sanity check in some cases. So for example, I have found obituaries that list the day in years, months, and days, but that also say, you know, she died last Saturday. And so that's just another verification that I've done it correctly and that that the person who put the information in likely did it correctly as well. Then I can just click clear and start over again. I can plug in any date. Again, this can be maybe a marriage date. So if it says she was 21 years old at the time she married, or if it says she was, you know, whatever, any date you can plug in and then put in the years, months, and days if they're known. Click calculate, and it will tell you what that year is. For those of us who are a little math challenged like I am, that's a really handy feature to have. You can calculate other event dates based on the birth date if you know the birth date, or you can calculate their age when a particular event occurred if you know that. So for example, if I know that she was born on the 30th of March 1847 and I know that she had a child on the 7th of December 1866, I can calculate that she was 19 years, 8 months, and 7 days old when that first child was born. Again, it's a sanity check. It also gives you this fun little feature, which is the day of the week that certain dates fell on. And for some of us, we find that kind of an interesting tidbit to add to our family stories. So that's the date calculator. That's how that works. Go ahead and play around with it and see how it works for you. See what circumstances you might want to use that under. It's kind of fun. Okay, the next option under our tools calculator that we're going to look at today is our relationship calculator. Now, before we do that, I just want to point out over here under Sarah, it lists her relationship to me. That's a feature I have turned on, and so it says that she's my first cousin 4 times removed, and then it lists who, if I hover over that, it pops up a little thing that lists who our common relative is, or our common ancestors are. That is always, however, in relationship to me because I am the home person in my tree. It always does it based on, this relationship here is always calculated based on who the home person is. So sometimes you want to calculate relationships between 2 other people on your tree. So in this case, when I click on the relationship calculator under tools, what it shows me is myself, because I'm the home person, and then Sarah, because that's who I'm on, that's whose profile I'm looking at, and it automatically says, you know, here's your relationship with the common ancestors in bold. Now I can then change this to anyone in my tree. You know, I could say, let's calculate this based on the relationship to this person, right? And click OK. And now it shows me that she is the first cousin 2 times removed to someone else. So I can use this relationship calculator to calculate relationships between any 2 people in my tree, not just the person I'm looking at and the home person, which is what this information over here shows me. Another kind of cool feature that I like is there's a button here to view the relationship chart. It takes you to an actual report that can be created that shows those 2 people. So here are the common ancestors, this couple, and then their children that these 2 people that we're looking at descend from. So it's a chart that is printable that you can give to people. I've actually given this to others when I'm trying to explain to them or show to them visually how they're related to me or how they're related to someone else in my tree. We're very visual creatures, and so this just helps to kind of visualize that in a little bit different way and sometimes in a little bit more clear way, especially when we're sharing it with other people. So again, you can put any 2 people in these fields to calculate their relationship. This little button just allows you to pick people out of the index of all of the people in your tree. If I want to go right back to the home person, which is myself, in this case, I can just click that little home button to do that. And if I want to swap them, swap their positions, I can do that. You'll notice it doesn't change the relationship, obviously, because they're still related in the exact same way. It just changes the way that that relationship is displayed here, and then also here in this relationship chart. So again, one of those things that I would encourage you to play around with, to become familiar with it. I often get asked the question about, well, how am I related to this person, or how are we connected? And this just gives me a quick way to do that. Okay, we're moving right along. The next thing we're going to look at here, very quickly, we have a SoundX calculator. SoundX is actually calculated when you do search on Ancestry.com. That's one of the surname filter options, is to have us search the SoundX variations for you. If you want to know what it is yourself, you can calculate that there just by typing in a last name. We have a global spell check. Okay, and what this does is it allows you to check for spelling errors in let's see if I can explain this correctly, non-factual fields. So for example, every place isn't necessarily going to be in the dictionary, but if you've typed in captions or tags for your media, or if you, like I do, use your notes extensively or the description fields extensively, you can see here we can check on any one of those to spell check those fields. And that's kind of handy, especially for those of us who get typing along very quickly and sometimes make those errors. We're going to skip resolve place names for now because we're going to talk about that next week when we talk about places. Let's look at this convert names option next. Now, there are times when you will make a change in your Family Tree Maker file where it will prompt you if you want to back up your file first. The reason is because some of these changes make universal or wide sweeping changes to your database. And you can't undo what you've done with just the click of a button. And so we encourage you to back up your file. Of course, we encourage you to back it up regularly anyway, to back up your file so that if it doesn't do what you expected it to do, you have a backup to return to or to rely on. Now, I just backed my file up this morning, so in this case, I'm going to click no. And here's what this convert names feature does. There, you may have received a GEDCOM from someone else that you've imported, or you may have imported some information or connected with some other trees, and you may notice that sometimes some people capitalize the surnames. So the first and middle names are what we call name case, where the first letter of each name of each word is capitalized, and then the surname is in all caps. Now, there are a lot of reasons why people do that. It used to be that capitalizing the entire surname was kind of a genealogical standard, because then when you were skimming down the page of a printed text, it was easy to pick the surnames very quickly off that page. When we moved to computers, that became less common of a practice. And so we just used standard name casing, which in this case is the first letter of each word capitalized. Now, some people still use this first, middle, surname thing with the surname in all caps when they want to identify their direct line ancestors. So, for example, they'll go through and themselves and their parents and their grandparents, and they'll capitalize the last name so that at a glance, if they're looking at a list of 10 or 12 children of their great-great-great-great-grandparents, they know exactly which one is their ancestor without having to think about it too much. They can just tell at a glance. So there are a lot of different reasons why people do this, and if you've inherited a GEDCOM or connected with other people's trees or downloaded some information, you may just want to standardize your file. So the easiest way to standardize your file is to just select one of these options, however you prefer to do it, and click OK. So if I selected this top option and clicked OK, what it would do is it would go through and take any surnames in my file that are in all caps, and it would change them to just name casing. And that's a really handy tool for just quick universal changes across your database if you want to make some of those changes. If I wanted to capitalize every surname in my database, I could click the second option and click OK. So that's what that convert names option is for. We have a compact file option here. And what this does, I'm not going to do it because it takes a little bit of time, but let me explain what it does. Basically, as you start working with your family tree, and the larger it gets, the way that databases are created, it sometimes kind of ends up, if you delete someone here, or you reconnect someone here, or you change information, as that happens and as your file grows, it becomes a little bit... the best way to explain this is like it comes out kind of like Swiss cheese. You've got little holes in your file where you may have deleted information or moved information. And so compact file just basically takes that file and squishes it all back together so that it takes up the least amount of space possible on your hard drive. That helps to keep your computer running smoothly. It also helps to keep your family tree maker file running smoothly. Also, if you've had an error on your computer where your computer shut down for some reason and you were in the middle of Family Tree Maker, you may have noticed that when you brought Family Tree Maker up the next time you booted up your computer, it actually asked you to compact your file. Again, it's so that it takes up the least amount of space on your hard drive and just keeps things clean and running smoothly. I can tell you I do this probably about once every 2 weeks. Now, you have to recognize I'm a very, very heavy Family Tree Maker user. I use it quite frequently, almost daily, and when I am in Family Tree Maker, I'm adding lots of information and changing and verifying, and so my file grows very quickly. And as I verify information, sometimes I have to delete other information. So I do it, like I said, about once every 2 weeks. If you're not a super frequent user of Family Tree Maker, you don't have to do it as often. But if you haven't ever done it, I would recommend that you do. Again, it's going to ask if you want to back up your database before you do this. I would always recommend that you do that. Just in case anything goes wrong, you've got a backup available to you. Now, the next option here on our tools menu is our user information. Now, what this is it's simply just a way for you to put in your contact info. So you'll see there is my contact information. And what that does is it allows you to, if you ever export part of your file as a GEDCOM to send to a cousin or share with someone, it keeps your user information with that file so that they know where it came from. It's a really handy thing. There's also some reports where if you're going to print out a report or a pedigree chart, it'll ask you if you want to include your user information so that, again, that it'll print your contact info right on that chart or report so that others know where it came from when they come across it. The last thing that we're going to talk about today, and we're pushing for time here, so we'll have to go quickly through some of these things, is the options. Now you'll notice in options we have several different tabs here. The first one is the general tab. All this tells me is where on my computer I'm going to store new trees. So if I happen to create a secondary tree because one of the reasons I create secondary trees is if I come across a branch of the family that somebody says is connected to mine, and I don't want to import it into my main tree yet. I just want to, maybe download the GEDCOM that a distant cousin sent me and look at it and prove some of that out before I import that into my main tree. That's why I might create a new tree. And so you can just tell your computer where you want that particular tree to be stored. There's a lot of other options here. I would encourage you to read through them, but some of the things that you might find slow up or speed down your computer. One of them is this automatically check for program updates when connected to the internet. Now, in my case, I leave that checked. As new updates come out for Family Tree Maker 2012, I want my computer to tell me that those are available. I don't want to have to remember to go check for those things. I have the option here, down here in my fast fields, where I can say used fast fields for names or places or descriptions. Again, it takes a little bit more processing power for my computer, which in my case I've decided is worth it because it takes a little less time in keystrokes because it anticipates what it is that I'm going to be typing. I also have the option to display different facts when I search. So most of you may notice I have this little shaky leaf over here on Sarah's name. I can have it automatically search anytime I'm connected to the internet so that it's showing me those shaky leaves. If I had that unchecked, then of course I would not see those little leaves. I also have the option here to exclude Ancestry member trees from my automatic search. That means that when I get these little hints, all it's going to be are actual records that Ancestry.com has found, census or death or immigration, whatever, as opposed to other people's trees. And that cleans up some of those hints really quickly because it shows me at a glance, really there's only records for these people. All the rest of this stuff is other people's trees. And then, of course, you have some options for, excuse me, for backing up your file automatically, which I choose to do every time I close my computer, for different ways that things display in your computer. Now let's look again at one more tab here, and then the other two I'll let you kind of explore on your own. This particular tab is for names, dates, and places. So dates are displayed different ways in different parts of the world, and we wanted to acknowledge that. However, the standard for family history is day, 3-letter month, and 4-digit year. That's the standard, and so that's the default. You can switch that, particularly in the UK, where sometimes dates are written a little bit differently. You can select how you want that to show up. But I would recommend that you go with the default. It also allows you to say how you're going to input the information. So regardless of how I input it, it'll still display this way. So it'll switch it for me. And there's some options there. Again, play around with it, see what happens, see what you like. Okay. There are some options here for the name index. Now you'll notice over here I have my index of all the people that are in my family tree. And it's in this particular case, I've asked it to sort by family name and given name, and then it has an added column here for the birth date. Well, in here, I can actually have it add, for example, married names for females. So Sarah Oral would not just show up as Oral Sarah over here in this list. She would also show up as Pursley Sarah, right? So it makes your index list longer, but it helps you to find, sometimes it helps you to find people quicker, especially women, because they may be listed in some records under their married name and in some records under their maiden name. So I can have those added to my index so that I can see them that way, find them that way as well. It also lets me use if people have other names. So for those of you who have ancestors who changed their names, particularly when they came to this country, you can have them indexed in either way if you have entered an AKA for them. So those are just some of the options there for names, dates, and places. I have this place authority. I want it checked every time I enter a place. I want to try and standardize that. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more next week when we talk about places. Before that, we're going to talk about reports. And let me just say, I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk about Family Tree Maker with you. Again, my main objective was just to give you kind of an overview, make you a little bit more comfortable with exploring. I don't expect you to remember every click here, click there that I shared with you today, but I do want you to go check it out for yourself, see what's possible. Play with your settings, see if it changes things into a way that you like. One of the things that we've discovered is that we get emails all the time from people who say, I wish your software would do this. And the reality is that literally about 8 times out of 10, our software does do that. It's just that you haven't taken the time to go explore what some of the options are that we've made available to you. We have to pick a default, and we picked the default that we felt was best, but you can customize and change some of those things. So I encourage you to do that. If you have questions about any of the things that we've talked about today, please feel free to stick around afterwards. If you're watching this live, I'll be on chat in just a few minutes. If you're watching an archived version of this on YouTube, just leave a comment on YouTube. I do check those pretty regularly and will respond as I can. If you have another topic that you'd like discussed, I am putting together the October calendar this next week. So if you could email me at ask@ancestry.com. If you have a specific research question or challenge, it doesn't hurt to include that, because then it gives me an idea of exactly what it is that you're looking for. And we will put together the calendar for October to help address some of your specific needs and challenges. You can check the Ancestry.com Facebook page. Click on that events tab there to see the topics, dates, and times for future live stream presentations. Until next time, this is Crista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.